So I guess a preface to this recording and whatnot is, what's it called? I don't really have a lesson plan, I guess, written up here or whatnot, so like, this is going to be much more sporadic one, or maybe like a little impromptu or whatnot in regards. But yeah, so I guess we're going to talk about the second part of Reform or Revolution or whatnot, right? Or Luxemburg's second polemic to Bernstein or whatnot. So I guess the context for this or whatnot is, after Luxemburg publishes her first piece or whatnot, or for her first polemic against Bernstein or whatnot, Bernstein, like I think it's just a couple of months later. This is still in the year 1900. I believe it's, yeah. I think this is later in the year 1900 or whatnot. Bernstein publishes another piece or whatnot, right? Like in some sense trying to defend himself. So if the first piece, like when Bernstein publishes the Evolutionary Socialism, he's he's not thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to cause this much controversy in the in the thing or whatnot. The second piece, in some sense, is him trying to, like, in one sense defend himself, but in another sense, like try to present another argument or whatnot, right? I will say the fatal thing that he does in this piece or whatnot is, if his first book or whatnot, Evolutionary Socialism, if he's abandoning the goal in the first piece or whatnot, so the first piece or whatnot, the first, I guess the first revisionist work he has, or the first opportunist book he has or whatnot, in some sense he's abandoning the goal, right? He's abandoning the idea of like, oh, the final revolution, or the revolution or whatnot, right? Or he's abandoning the idea of a revolution or whatnot, right? I would say that Bernstein or whatnot, like he still has the idea that like, oh, the proletariat like seizes the means of production or whatnot, right? Here, like you almost see Bernstein regress in his own time, like in the few months or whatnot since he's written his last work, he regresses even further. Where in some sense he abandons even the movement or whatnot, right? Because basically, this piece starts off for like Rosa Luxemburg basically starts by saying, the greatest conquest of the developing proletarian movement has been the discovery of the grounds of support for the realization of socialism in the economic condition of capitalist society. As a result of this discovery, socialism was changed from an ideal dreamt up by humanity for thousands of years to being a historic necessity or whatnot, right? Because Marxism is all, or the whole predication of Marxism is all predicated on the idea that, hey, socialism is a historical necessity or whatnot, that we can have basically like a classless society or whatnot, right? And like, this is a historical reality and a historical necessity or whatnot, right? Bernstein in his second book, he just denies this or whatnot. Like he denies the economic conditions for socialism today or whatnot, right? Bernstein says, actually, socialism isn't even possible or whatnot, or socialism in the Marxist sense isn't even possible or whatnot. And like his, like, I guess evidence for this or whatnot is he brings up like, or he brings up like a book, or like he basically writes a book in which he brings up a bunch of statistics of like shareholding societies or whatnot, right? Do people understand like how shareholders work or whatnot? Well, so like, you want to know? Okay, so like, so with shareholding and whatnot is basically like, or like, I guess instead of trying to explain what shareholding is, I'll point out that like during this time or whatnot, right? Like because you're having this transition from liberal capitalism into a more monopoly capitalism or whatnot, right? In Marx's time, the idea of a capitalist or whatnot, right, is like it'd be like your Scrooge, or your Scrooge McDuck, or like it'd be your Mr. Krabs, right? Like it'd be like your guy, right? It'll be just like that one guy or whatnot, where it's like money or whatnot, right? Like in some senses, like you knew who the capitalists were or whatnot, right? But like what you're seeing in this turn of the century or whatnot, what you're seeing in the 1900s is you're starting to see like a new kind of capitalist or whatnot, where you have like the shareholders, where it's like they're just blank faced, you don't know who they are or whatnot, right? But Bernstein Bernstein's like, hey, like what Bernstein sees is like, he's like, hey, look, you're having an increase in all these shareholders or whatnot. You're seeing, in some sense, he's saying, hey, maybe Bernstein thinks it's like, hey, you're having this increase in shareholders, you're having this, increase of the capitalist class, or, number of people who are capitalists or whatnot. So for Bernstein thinks like, doesn't this suggest that Marx is wrong? Because Marx thought that, like, as time would move on, you'd have a greater concentration of capitalism, or you'd have a greater concentration of capital, and then you'd have a much more proletarianized society or whatnot. That this would be a growing antagonism. But Bernstein's like, hey, look, you have this development of shareholders or whatnot, you have an expansion of the capitalist class or whatnot, so, maybe Marx was wrong. And Luxemburg's like, no, you idiot. Like, actually, like, she said this is that Bernstein's wrong for three reasons. The first reason or whatnot is because Bernstein's first error is that he understands capitalists and capital to refer to individuals and money or whatnot, rather than like capitalists referring to a class, and capital referring to a factor of production or whatnot. The second error is in this work or whatnot. Whereas in the first work, Bernstein's focused on production or whatnot. Bernstein's redefining of socialism focuses on wealth distribution rather than social relations of the production to define capitalism. So in some sense, like this is where I would say Bernstein becomes in some sense like much more contemporary. Where nowadays when people think of socialism, they think about it as being like a distribution between a distribution of wealth or whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. The original task of socialism is for the change of the means of production or whatnot, for the change of the ownership of production, for in some sense the collective ownership of production. So for no one to have, or in some sense for the collective. In some sense, for everyone to own, the factories, for everyone to own industry, or for all this or stuff. Bernstein, in some sense, vulgarizes himself, where he was like, actually, maybe we could have socialism as just wealth distribution or whatnot, right? But if you think about that, it's like, how's that socialism at all? That's just, that's just wealth distribution or whatnot, right? In some sense, Bernstein thinks it's like, oh yeah, wealth distribution, that would be socialism or whatnot, right? And also Bernstein sees the growth of the middle class or whatnot as suggesting the impossibility of socialism, because he's Bernstein thinks as you have this growth of the middle class or whatnot, right? You're not going to have the majority of people revolt or whatnot, but I guess Luxemburg's quote here is social democracy does not, however, the social democracy does not, however, expect to attain it in its aim as a result of the. The social democracy does not, however, expect to attain its aim either as a result of the victorious violence of a minority or through the numerical superiority of a majority. It sees socialism come as a result of economic necessity and the comprehension of that necessity, leading to the suppression of capitalism by the working classes or masses or whatnot, right? Whereas Bernstein or whatnot thinks that capitalism can be alleviated from economic crises or whatnot, right? Luxemburg's no, right? And we all know this or whatnot. You can't, capitalism will always have crises in it or whatnot, right? It will constantly have, I guess I'm going to move on from this chapter or whatnot, right? Or kind of move on from this chapter, because basically just to get at the summary of this chapter or whatnot, Bernstein basically suggests that hey, Bernstein's new / kind of revised theory of his revisionism, or his revised theory of gradual socialism, is this idea that hey, he thinks that worker co-ops or whatnot, worker co-ops and labor unions or whatnot will be able to allow us allow for better distribution or whatnot, right? Will allow for better distribution and will allow for greater flourishing of socialism and whatnot. But as we already talked about before or whatnot, trade unions or whatnot only organizes or whatnot, right? Or trade unions are only a defensive measure or whatnot, right? I won't repeat that point because we made that in the first one. And then Luxemburg's other point, or Luxemburg's refutation for Bernstein's argument of co-ops or whatnot, right? With co-ops you have with worker co-ops you literally have workers control. Luxemburg points out that hey, capitalism is an international economy or whatnot, right? When you have worker co-ops or whatnot, what those worker co-ops actually serve as is they just serve as their own kind of capitalist or whatnot, right? Or they just become a capitalist in themselves or whatnot, right? Let's see. You mind if you scroll down or whatnot, right? So, So I guess, long point short, or making a long point short or whatnot, right? For Bernstein, Bernstein basically, his idea of gradual socialism or not, in some sense just becomes this idea of oh, we have a moral imperative to do socialism or not, and that's never been the point of Marxism, because Marxism has always been no, socialism is a historic necessity born out of economic conditions or whatnot, right? But Bernstein, on the contrary or whatnot, just thinks that no, actually, you could just have this gradual. You just because of our moral imperatives or whatnot, you'll just have this you'll just have we'll just vote our way to socialism or whatnot, right? Let me think. Well, okay, let me emphasize the two big points in the second half of the point or whatnot, which is reform and revolution and whatnot. Because in Bernstein's second work and whatnot, he's still really emphasizing these antinomies. So for Bernstein basically, he tries to reduce, or he basically tries to say that, oh, what is a reform? Or he basically tries to say that reforms are like a slow intellectual process, whereas a revolution is a spontaneous act of a feeling or whatnot, right? And then Luxemburg's like, no, reforms are a means to revolution or whatnot. And historically or whatnot, like when it came down to the bourgeois revolutions or whatnot, right? The bourgeoisie, they had within feudalism, they had to basically make legislative reforms or whatnot to build themselves up for revolution or whatnot, right? And Luxemburg's point is like, hey, history moves through revolution or whatnot, right? Every starting point at any point in every historic period has been through a revolution or whatnot, right? So for Bernstein, and I think you see this view today or whatnot when people try to counterpose reform and revolution or whatnot, right? Is people have this understanding where it's like, oh, what is it? Like reforms are just like a slow measure or whatnot, or like a slow drawn out process or whatnot. In some sense, it's a slow revolution or whatnot, whereas a revolution is a condensed series of reforms or whatnot, right? And no. Just fucking no, right? Like what reforms do, or what reforms do or not, is that reforms or not build up the consciousness of workers. It shows people the inadequacy of the system. In some sense, it builds up their strength. It builds up their organization. It builds up, it builds up their quality or whatnot, right? The whole reason why the Social Democratic Party is called social democracy is because it's thought that because it was thought that you needed a republic with enough social content in it. Social content being social services and social programs in it or not, to, in some sense, organize the workers or not, organize the consciousness of the workers to be politically ready to take over the state or not, right? So Bernstein's whole era, or Bernstein's reform, the era of reformism or whatnot, right, is a whole idea that it amounts to preserving the old society, not creating a new one. It amounts to in some sense trying to hold on and preserve and save capitalism or whatnot, right? Rather than understanding reform as a means to revolution or whatnot. And it's funny because in some sense you almost see the opposite problem today, where some people read reform and revolution or whatnot and be like, yeah, revolution and before reform. You'll see this some of these leftists some left events that you go to, you'll see these people disparaging on reforms or whatnot, right? Where they're like, that they'll be like, oh, you don't need reforms, you need a revolution. And I'd recommend if you ever talk to someone where they're in some sense they're just throwing out reforms and they're saying we need a revolution, we can't have reforms. I mean this very seriously. Put your hand over the shoulders and be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because revolutions come about through reforms or whatnot, right? Reforms are basically quantitatively change or whatnot. The situation of a class or whatnot. A revolution qualitatively changes the situation of the entire society or whatnot, right? So what's it called? And also, what Luxemburg points out or whatnot is also that you can't reform your way out of capitalism, because she points out that hey, bourgeois society or whatnot is not the same as any society before it, because in every society before it or whatnot, in every society preceding bourgeois society or whatnot, right? Domination was judicial, or domination was legal or whatnot, right? If you're a peasant because you're by God you're ordained there or whatnot. If you're a king, you're a king because of the law or whatnot, right? Luxemburg points out that in bourgeois society, that's not the case. You're not a proletariat because of the law. You're not a capitalist because of the law. You're that position because it's because of social domination. It's economical. It's not legal or whatnot, right? You're a proletariat, but you could become a capitalist. You're a capitalist, but you could become proletarianized. So because of this, Luxemburg says you can't just reform. You can't reform classes or whatnot. You can't abolish. You can't vote out wage slavery or whatnot, because wage slavery isn't instituted, right? In a sense, the thing about capitalism or whatnot, unlike caste society, right? Unlike feudalism, where it's on its very basis or whatnot, right? People are separated into different positions in society. With capitalism, classes are a consequence; they're not the effect, right? When when capitalism came into its emergence or whatnot, there wasn't this idea that you'd have the separation of society. That's a consequence or whatnot, and because of that, you can't just vote out wage slavery or whatnot, whatnot, right? You can't just vote out work or whatnot, because like, you can't just vote out like economic domination or whatnot, right? Like, no, you actually have to like take control of the social process or whatnot and change, like, radically change the social relations of society or whatnot, right? Because otherwise, or whatnot, right? Like, there's just no way or whatnot, right? Yeah. Do you mind if you scroll down to the screenshot or whatnot, right? Yeah, and just click on the screenshot. So like, yeah. So I'm just gonna read this piece because I would say that this piece is, or like this section or whatnot. This is in chapter 9, I believe, titled "Collapse" or whatnot. It's basically where Luxemburg, or this is chapter 9 or chapter 10. This is where basically Luxemburg basically summarizes this section of the book or whatnot. And once again, I apologize for being super sporadic with this piece because, like, yeah, I guess I wasn't as prepped or whatnot as I'd like to be. So, yeah, so I'm just reading directly off of Luxemburg. So, Bernstein began his revision of the social democracy by abandoning the theory of capitalist collapse. The latter, however, is a cornerstone of scientific socialism. By rejecting it, Bernstein also rejects the whole doctrine of socialism. In the course of this discussion, he abandons one after another of the positions of socialism in order to be able to maintain his first affirmation. Without the collapse of capitalism, the expropriation of the capitalist class is impossible. Bernstein therefore renounces expropriation and chooses a progressive realization of the cooperative principle as the aim of the labor movement. But cooperation cannot be realized without capitalist production. Bernstein therefore renounces the socialization of production and merely proposes to reform commerce and to develop consumers' cooperatives. But transformation of society through consumers' co-ops, even by means of trade unions, is incompatible with the real material development of capitalist society. Therefore, Bernstein abandons the materialist conception of history. But his conception of the march of economic development is incompatible with the Marxist theory of surplus value. Therefore, Bernstein abandons the theory of value and surplus value, and in this way, the whole economic system of Karl Marx. But the struggle of the proletariat cannot be carried out without a given final aim and without an economic base found in an existing society. Bernstein therefore abandons the class struggle, which is the whole politics of Marxism, by the way. Bernstein therefore abandons the class struggle and speaks of reconciliation with bourgeois liberalism. But in a class society, the class struggle is a natural and unavoidable phenomenon. Bernstein therefore, do you mind if you move the mouse? Bernstein therefore contests even the existence of classes in society. The working class is for him a mass of individuals divided politically and intellectually, but also economically. And the bourgeoisie, according to him, does not group itself politically in accordance with its inner economic interests, but only because of exterior pressures from above and below. But if there's no economic base for the class struggle, and if consequently there are no classes in our society, not only the future but even the past struggles of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie appear to be impossible, and the social democracy and its successes seem absolutely incomprehensible, or they can be understood only as a result of the political pressure by the government. That is, not as a natural consequence of historic development, but as a fortuitous consequence of the policy of the Husserlian. I actually don't know the word. Policy of the Husserlian, not as a legitimate offspring of capitalist society, but as a legitimate offspring of capitalist. Not as a legitimate offspring of capitalist society, but as the legitimate offspring of capitalist society. It really just says that twice. But as the bastard children of reaction. Rigorously logical in every respect, Bernstein passes from the materialist conception of history to the outlook of the some German word and the Frankfurter Zeitung and the Voice Zeitung. After rejecting the socialist criticism of capitalist society, it is easy for Bernstein to find the present state of affairs satisfactory, at least in a general way. Bernstein does not hesitate. He discovers that at the present time, reaction is not very strong in Germany, and that we cannot speak of political reaction in the countries of Western Europe. And then all the countries of the West, the attitude of the bourgeois class towards the socialist movement is at most the attitude of defense and not of repression. Far from becoming worse, the situation of the workers is actually getting better. Indeed, the bourgeoisie is politically progressive and morally sane. We cannot speak of either of regression or reaction or oppression. It is for the best of all possible worlds. Bernstein travels in a logical sequence from A to Z. He begins by abandoning the final aim and supposedly keeping the movement. But as there can be no socialist movement without a socialist aim, he ends by renouncing the movement. So, to just very quickly summarize that, it's basically Bernstein keeps what Bernstein keeps doing is he keeps rejecting certain premises of Marxism, where in the end or whatnot, he's just like, well, actually, we don't live in a class society, and actually, we need to he basically just gives up on socialism and whatnot. He just basically becomes a liberal at the by the end of his work or whatnot, right? Do you mind if you scroll to the bottom or whatnot? So, okay. I was gonna say, if you got nothing out of these last 20 minutes, this is basically the last thing I'll say, or here's the critical importance of reform or revolution. So, Luxemburg basically says that Bernstein's book is of great importance to the German and the international labor movement, right? Because it's the first attempt to give a theoretic base to the opportunist currents common in social democracy, or whatnot, right? Because what Rosa Luxemburg identifies is how does opportunism arise out of the workers' movement? Is Luxemburg says that opportunism arises as a hostility to theory or whatnot, right? So what's it called? So actually, just not looking at the screen, just so I could I guess not be So yeah, basically, Luxemburg's whole point of what I was opportunism is not a thought error. Right? Bernstein isn't opportunism is not a thought error. Opportunism arises out of the real growth of the labor movement. So in some sense, it's interesting because it's as you have a workers' movement grow, right, you inevitably have opportunist, anarchist, radical bourgeois reformist tendencies or whatnot within the movement or whatnot, right? And it's interesting because Luxemburg even goes so far to say hey, Marxism actually predicted this before, or Marx actually predicted this beforehand or whatnot, where she quotes a passage from Marx where it's Marx predicted the idea that as you have the growth of the movement or whatnot, you're going to see past tendencies or in some sense undisciplined tendencies or whatnot. So Luxemburg does an interesting thing where she's actually in some sense she thanks Bernstein or whatnot, where she's she thanks Bernstein because she's hey, Bernstein's the first person to in some sense articulate the opportunist tendency within the workers' movement, because Luxemburg says Bernstein's not just an individual. Bernstein is actually expressing a real tendency within the workers' movement. There are workers are becoming opportunists because the workers' movement is growing, and as you have the growth of this movement or whatnot, you do have this opportunist tendency or whatnot, right? So she says, here's the crossroads of a mass movement. Either you abandon the mass character of the party, or you abandon the final aim, or you abandon, the end goal of the party by falling into bourgeois reformism or sectarianism or anarchism or opportunism or whatever or whatnot, right? But in some sense, Luxemburg thinks Bernstein because what Bernstein has done is Bernstein has articulated or whatnot, right? Or Bernstein has articulated the opportunist tendency in the socialist movement. So because of that, it has given the SPD an object of critique or whatnot, right? The object of critique being opportunism, and because it has that object of critique or whatnot, the workers' movement can move past it or whatnot, right? And it's funny because after she publishes this polemic, even though she thanks Bernstein in an ironical way, she's we need to kick this guy out of the party or whatnot, right? And she's this is what she proposes or whatnot. She actually proposes that the revisionists get kicked out of the SPD, and I can't remember if they. I think most of them do get kicked out or whatnot. I think Bernstein does stay or whatnot, but I know Rosa Luxemburg was a very strong supporter of kicking Bernstein out of the party or whatnot, being hey, he's an opportunist or whatnot, let's throw him out of the party or whatnot, right? So yeah, I guess I'll make this one final point or whatnot, because I know a supplemental reading for this week or whatnot is what's it called? A supplemental reading for this week or whatnot is Eugene Debs' Cooperation versus Competition. Now, admittedly, I didn't read it or whatnot, but I'd like to actually just for reference, I'd actually like to contrapose like Eugene Debs or whatnot. Who, for context, Eugene Debs is the founder of the Socialist Party in America or whatnot, right? With Edward Bernstein, because what happens with the development of Edward Bernstein is Edward Bernstein goes from being a Marxist to being a liberal or whatnot. And how does that development happen? How does he go from being a Marxist to a liberal? It's because with Bernstein loses the dialectic because, if you all remember last week, actually, I'm not sure if I said this last week, but I'll make this point. Marxism is a dialectic between freedom and necessity, or I'll put it in the phrase of like liberalism and socialism or whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. That actually let me not use those terms because like if I'm calling Bernstein a liberal or whatnot, well, actually I'll use these terms but then explain further what I mean. So Marxism is a dialectic between liberalism and socialism in the sense that socialism critiques the movement or whatnot, right? Socialism, the workers' movement, basically opposes liberalism for its inadequacies. But liberalism still tasks socialism with a goal of freedom or whatnot, right? Bernstein becomes a liberal in the sense that Bernstein, in some sense, Bernstein abandons the movement, but he also abandons the final goal, or he abandons the task of freedom or whatnot, right? So in some sense, he abandons liberalism, but in some sense, this is how he becomes a liberal. In some sense, he becomes undialectical in the sense that. So actually, let me put it as means and ends. The movement is the means, and the ends is the goal or whatnot, right? Bernstein abandons the ends, and because he abandons the ends, he becomes a liberal because he sees liberalism as an adequate horizon or whatnot. It's from here because Bernstein loses the dialectic. He goes from being a Marxist to being a liberal or whatnot. Do people understand that? Whereas Eugene Debs has an opposite development where Eugene Debs starts off by being a populist or whatnot. What is the populist movement in America? The populist movement in America or whatnot is it's a movement that's all super discontented or whatnot, right? With capitalism or whatnot. It's in some sense it's like, if I remember correctly, it's like a semi-conservative movement or whatnot, in the sense that it's just discontent with capitalism or whatnot, right? But how Eugene Debs becomes a Marxist or whatnot? Eugene Debs, I can't remember how, but basically Eugene Debs or whatnot, in some sense, picks up the other side. In some sense, he's like, hey, there's these discontents with capitalism or whatnot, but maybe in some sense he picks up the goal of freedom. He's like, oh, but what is the end goal here or whatnot, right? And with Eugene Debs picking up this end goal of freedom or whatnot, with having these means actually be configured to an end or whatnot, he becomes a socialist or whatnot, right? So opposite developments. Bernstein becomes a liberal or whatnot by losing the dialectic, and Eugene Debs becomes a Marxist by learning the dialectic or whatnot, right? This was kind of a messy lecture or whatnot, but do people have any questions or whatnot, just for clarification or whatnot? Because I know I went through a lot of material really quickly or whatnot, right? But yeah. If not, well, let me ask a few questions just for clarification or whatnot, and then I'll stop the recording, just to see. So, one, do people understand why reform and revolution can't be counterposed? Yeah. Does anyone want to try to explain? No.
It's because reform leads to the revolution.
Right, reform leads to the revolution, and it's reforms gives some means to the revolution or not. So because of that, you cannot split these two. It's not reform or revolution; it's reform and revolution or not. Reform or revolution, that counterposition or not is just false or not, right? It's just incorrect. And do people understand how opportunism arises out of, or do people understand where the tendency of opportunism arises?
Yes. So it's as the movement gets larger, there will be people that are well, what if we do this instead, or kind of change the premise of the goal.
Right. It's an abandonment of theory, right? It's an abandonment of the end or not, right? So, yeah, I guess I'll end the recording here and then